One. This week on the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon, where's my script? There it is. Labor Day is rapidly approaching, and we have another huge weekend in theaters and on streaming services. The biopic for the iconic performer Aretha Franklin, Respect, finally arrives. Plus, the Ryan Reynolds sci-fi action comedy Free Guy is also in theaters. And one of the most anticipated films from the Sundance Film Festival, CODA, also arrives on Apple Plus. Now, the latest series from Disney Plus, What If, also debuted earlier this week to rave reviews, and we'll discuss that as well. Charles Kirkland Jr. is on vacation, so Travis Hopson, we are reunited, and it feels so good. He will be joining us today. We'll have all that and more on episode 467 of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon, and the guy who I guess is bending down to reach out for something that he didn't get is Travis Hopson. Travis Hopson and I have a storied, decade-long partnership, which is really interesting because we used to do this every week on another show. What was this show called? Addicted to Film.
We did Addicted to Film. It was you and I on Addicted to Film. I used to do your show. I used to do this show every week. Also,
do this show every week. He is at Punch Drunk Critics. we do WETAs around town together.
And then Tim stopped calling. He's like, you know what? Man. I found somebody cheaper. I don't need you anymore. And I was like, that's fine. I don't work for free. So it's okay.
You funny. And also, whenever, look, Travis, whenever we can be in person again, I'm assuming we can either do our Oscar night events or trailer park.
We need to reach out about that, actually. I was actually thinking about going to reach out to you, see if we would reach out about starting those back up again soon. But who knows? The way things are going, who knows, man?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say for the record officially that I have put a lot of money into Travis Hopson's pockets over the years, and I have never been thanked properly for this. Travis, this is your opportunity. I'm right here, man. Go ahead.
I would like to add that I have put just as much money in his pockets because we were doing the same shows. So
wait a second. Okay, I'm not gonna say nothing, man. He's right. We are doing the same shows, and to his point, and this is inside baseball. Travis has put a lot of money in my pocket because there's been some days I'm like, you got it, T. Go ahead, man. Yeah, bro, we worked together for a long time, man. So I'm glad to have you back. We need to have you back more often, man, because seriously, man, we get, since the pandemic has come, we all get in these little bubbles, man, where we're not really stretching out. We're doing a lot of this stuff on Zoom.
Sorry, and the cat rubbing around my feet. There's a cat that keeps walking in between my legs.
See, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in normal circumstances, man.
No, that doesn't usually happen on the set of WETA, not normally. But I am happy to be here, happy to be on the show again, and talking to you, of course, about movies. A lot of stuff came out this week, so it's a very interesting week. So yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. So before we get into it, I was at a screening last night along with several other senior officers of the Washington, D.C. area.
Is the Protege?
Yes, at the Protege.
I punched in the wrong location in my calendar, so I went to the wrong theater.
Watch this. I've done that a lot of times.
I've done a lot. I've gotten so in the pandemic era, I've gotten so accustomed to them being at Tyson's Corner, which is like right by my house, that I kind of punched in automatically at first before I realized I messed up. And this time I didn't fix it. And I was like, so I got there and I was like, I don't see the publicists out here. And I was like, damn it. I punched in the wrong thing. So I just went and I stayed and I saw a different movie. I saw Don't Breathe instead. So
wait a minute. So I'm going somewhere with this. So we were having a conversation about the conditions that are changing in society right now as it relates to where we are in this pandemic. And, I think to a person last night, the senior management, we are all under the impression that we would like to not have to be physically forced to come back to screenings. Now, I know from talking to you throughout the months, you feel differently. And I know we're going to probably be polling our membership over the next week or so to find out, because, you know, hey, man, as I said last night, the one thing that the pandemic has taught us, Travis, is that there's a link for every movie that's out there. Don't believe that you can't get a link for a movie. Yeah. I was sharing with you before we went on the air that one of our colleagues, told me that he's really not trying to go to a movie. And one of the films that we're going to talk about today, they claimed that they were trying to pull people in the theaters. He got a link for that. So there's a link for every movie if you want one. So, hey, man, but what is your impression? What are you feeling, Travis, about?
You are absolutely right. There's a link for every movie. I think we always sort of knew that.
Right.
Because it didn't make sense that you dragged every single person in to go to a movie all the time. That never made any sense. But definitely now in these times, we know that there's links for everything. I'd be curious to know which movie it is that you're talking about specifically this week that you saw this week.
I will give you the eyebrow raise when we start talking about it today. You look for this.
Yeah, but I know, like, the movie that I said I missed last night. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a link for that just so I can be part of interviews. And so there's always been links.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet.
For the most part, I'm willing to go back to the theaters. I've been doing it for months. I mean, I was one of the handful who went back to theaters last year to go see New Mutants. Like, I'll brave the theaters. I'm smart enough to keep myself as safe as possible and socially distanced, and of course I'm vaccinated. I don't mind doing that, and I do appreciate the precautions they're taking by not filling up these screenings. Some of the movies we got coming up, they would normally be jammed to the rafters, but they're keeping them at like 50% or even less than that, and they seem to be adding more screenings for things too, and press only, so that we can be safer. So I do appreciate that, and I don't mind coming off of that. But do I also appreciate getting screeners sent to me? Yes. I think for 80 to 90% of the movies out there, I'm perfectly fine watching them at home. I don't need to be at a theater to go see CODA as much as I love CODA, or something like that. I don't need to be in the theater for that. I think these things should be taken by a case-by-case situation. That's why I'm looking at it right now.
Well, you didn't need to be in the theater for the one we watched last night, because that was my first comment. I was like, I couldn't have got a link for that. Really? You dragged me to the theater for this?
Yeah.
All right, man.
So that needed to be on the big screen either. So.
All right, man.
That movie's right in my wheelhouse, and I still would rather watch it at home if I can.
It is a Travis Hopson movie. And the one thing I will say, man, honestly, all joking aside, and I've said it to him privately, and I'll say it to him publicly. Being joined at the hip with Travis Hopson over all these years, it's been a lot of fun. We're like brothers. There are times that we'll fight over stuff. I'll be like, man, I'm not doing that. Travis, bump you. And Travis will come back and do the same stuff. But Travis is smart, he's intelligent, and he has the one that a lot of people who do this show, and a lot of people who are in my cinematic circle, the ones who are closest are the ones that have what Travis has, right? It's the passion. I really like people who are very passionate about film, right? I don't have to agree with everything you say, but I get and understand that Travis cares about movies just as much as I do. And I think that's been the glue that has made our relationship so strong. Plus, I think to a certain degree that Travis respects me, because I already know how he feels about people he
yeah,
and that's another story. That's inside baseball, but Travis is hard. If Travis doesn't feel that you are a legitimate critic, he will let you, or he'll let me know. And I'm like, come on, Travis, damn.
I mean, look, I'm with you on that, man. I've been doing this for, Jesus Christ, almost 13, 14 years now, like officially, I guess you would say. And you've been by my side for almost all of that. And one of the things that I've learned over the years since I've been doing this is that I'm in the same way. I like people who give a crap about movies, and they don't have to be needing to review something for them to be following movies and seeing what's going on in the industry, changing trends and stuff like that, big news. I like people that are on constantly on the ball about what's going on all the time,
Right.
and not just people who show up when it's time to go watch a movie. I don't like that. I never have. I want people who are always invested in this, because I'm invested in this. I have been for a long time. So yeah, you and I see eye to eye on that.
Man, another thing, because we're gonna lead off with CODA in a second, but this is gonna be my seg into it. I never forget. It had to be about 10 or 11 years ago. We were at, I want to say it was Mazza Gallery. It was like January. It was cold, nasty night outside. We were watching a screening of a movie. And I remember leaving, coming down, and I said, you asked me how I felt about the movie. And I was like, it's January, man. I grade on the curve, man. These movies are all terrible, man.
Worst idea you ever had.
Man, Travis and I had a heated debate over that one. And I still feel that way. I still feel, actually now Travis is a little different, because with the pandemic, they're jamming movies in.
All that's changed now.
Yeah. But you remember back in the day, man, what January and February.
Everything was stupid back then. It's stupid now, but they so there really is no curve, because movies come out. I actually said that right around that same time anyway, that movies come out all year round now. It's not, you can't just pigeonhole like this is a January movie. I used to do that in the beginning too, because they would dump crap in January, but they had also begun to move away from that as more distribution options were presented. So it hasn't been that way for a few years. It isn't just the pandemic that changed it. I think the pandemic has maybe exacerbated it to some degree, because now there's just so much content,
right,
and streaming. This stuff is just out there all the time. Like, there's not a week that goes by without there's being something worthwhile that's coming out, like from January to December, from start to finish.
Well, speaking of something worthwhile, man, you had an opportunity to go to Sundance because they like you more than me now, and you don't have a problem with that. You think they like you more than me?
It has nothing to do. Well, it does have something to do with me, but it doesn't have. Like, I'm not directly involved in the reason why they like me better than you.
This is our dynamic, which is why it's a lot of fun. So Travis, CODA is the opening night film at Sundance, right? You had an opportunity to see it early. We just recently reviewed it on Around Town. An amazing film. Yeah. Watch this. I'm going to set you up the way that you love. When we're doing Around Town, they normally will introduce to both of us, and then they kind of alternate. So they'll go, and Travis, what do you think about CODA? Talk to us about CODA.
Yeah, Robert will usually have some sort of leading question. And
we should have had him on today, and then you and I could have just sat here and did like a podcast version of Around Town.
All right. Maybe that's something we should pitch to them. So yeah, CODA is a tremendous movie. It means child of deaf adults, and I had never seen a movie about this particular subset of America before. I had never even thought of it. A person who's the only hearing member of a deaf family. It had never even crossed my mind. Even with a movie like Sound of Metal that came out just a year ago, which explored a part of the deaf community that I never really thought about before either. I had never considered this, and it does it in a way that is both heartwarming and crowd pleasing. Stars Amelia Jones as the hearing member of her family. She's integral to everything that they do because of that. I mean, she's their link to the community. She's the person who helps run their business, their fishing business. But she also has aspirations of her own. She's a teenage girl, of course she does. And she's constantly being pulled from her dreams of being a singer, which is ironic in itself, that she has this beautiful voice that her family will never hear. And of course, her obligations to them. And it's just a fantastic story, man. Like, I think without the deaf aspect of it, it's just another coming of age story that we've seen a million times before. But just that little touch, that adding that thing that you've probably never seen a movie of before in your life, makes it so much better, man. This movie's simply amazing. And of course, it helps that it has people like Marlee Matlin in it too. Marlee Matlin, who's been an activist for the deaf community and deaf actors her entire career. She brought something personal to this as well. Just a terrific movie, man.
And I absolutely agree. And I think you're absolutely right, and you're spot on that what separates this film, we've seen coming of age movies forever, right? You can go back to John. I think it's John Hughes who did the 16. Is it John Hughes?
Yeah, John Hughes.
16 Candles and all those films, Pretty in Pink. So one of those types of stories. But I think the thing that I loved about this film, and the layers to it, because there's several to me, is that, as you said, man, she is really the connection. She is the person that the family leans on as the only hearing member, who helps them in so many different things, in the pull and the push and pull, or the tug, that she's trying to have her own life, but the family doesn't want to let her go. She sings, they can't hear her. There's a line in there, the mother's like, how you're singing and we can't hear it. What if you were a painter and we were blind? Like, how would that work? So she's feeling all this pressure. And then that beautiful scene, man, in the third act, man, when she's at that audition and she is performing, but signing for her family. And I was like,
oh man, yeah,
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah, that is a great moment, man.
Woo!
It's stuff like that makes this movie so great. And we talk about how that aspect of it really elevates it. One of the actors in the movie is Ferdia Wash-Pilo, who starred in Sing Street just a couple years ago, which is one of those movies that is like familiar, that's so overly familiar. It's still a great movie. Sing Street's awesome. But CODA is beyond even that because of the personal touches, the deaf aspect that we talked about. It's just, like I said, it's something we really haven't seen before. I love the way her family has so much personality. They're characters in and of themselves. I even like Eugenio Derbez as her music teacher. He's an actor that I'm normally very lukewarm on, but I really like him in this. And Emilia Jones, man, I think she's going to be a breakout star. I think she's got a big future ahead of her after this movie. I just hope people go and see it, and it's going to be on Apple TV Plus as well as in theaters. I'm hoping that the buzz makes this one like one of those indie summer hits that we get usually once a year. You're usually like one that breaks out, and I'm hoping this is going to be it.
So one of the debates we always have when we start talking about Sundance, and you and I have been going for any number of years now, is that people always go, we've seen films like Brooklyn and Whiplash and some others that try to go wire to wire. It's hard, man, to see a film that, even no matter how good it is, to see if it can be in award contention. Yeah. A lot of times, Travis, I'm starting to understand that we put a little more emphasis on awards than I think the general public does. The public just wants to see good stories. And then if you have, I can't pronounce the director's name, is this Sean Heder?
Sean Heder.
Sean Heder. Okay, thanks. We just want to see if Sean Heder can build on what he's done, or what, is it a he or is it she?
She.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked. We just want to build on what she's done moving forward. Is that an oversimplification, man? Because I don't really think that it devalues CODA any less if CODA won't get a lot of awards attention. I still think it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't know if this movie is going to get awards attention or not. I think maybe in some of the regional awards things, like maybe in DC here, we probably will shower accolades on it, I believe. But when it comes like bigger critics groups, I'm not so sure if it'll get that or not. Not because it'll be forgotten. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot. There's always a lot, and it's hard to predict what's gonna click and what's not. But I will say that I think CODA is a film that will be remembered, and I think that's just as important as being showered with awards. I think that matters more than anything else. This movie will be remembered, and it's on streaming, so it should be around for a very long time for people.
And I was going to say, not only will it be remembered, but I also recommend it as a must-see. So wonderful family drama. You should definitely check it out. And as Travis said, it's on Apple Plus if you stream it. So go and check it out. Is it doing any theaters, or is it just Apple Plus?
It's in some theaters too, if I remember right. It's in some theaters too, and Apple TV Plus. So I'm hoping people will go see it in theaters as well. I wouldn't mind going to see it in theater, even though it's not like a traditional theater movie.
Right.
I would like to support it.
No doubt. No doubt, no doubt.
So and that's what people that would love to see it who don't have Apple TV Plus.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point as well. So Travis, the fourth series from Disney Plus debuted earlier this week. What If? You and I are among the precious few who were given advanced screening copies of it. So we've seen like the first 3 episodes. I have to say, man, because I'm going to let you dominate the floor because this is kind of your genre. This one to me coming out the box. Maybe only Loki would probably be the equal coming out the box. I really enjoyed the first 3 installments of this really a lot and watched them over and over. Right. Next week is going to be a little bittersweet for people. I'm not going to say any more than that.
It's going to be tough for people.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be very emotional. And then the one after that, Travis, I just thought that was genius. I was like, wow, man, Marvel.
They have this thing, Marvel, when they send these screeners out, they have this thing where they always send you just enough to get you to the point where you're like, damn it, I need more right now. Like they always leave you with something that has you on the hook. And the first 3 episodes of What If, look, I like them all.
Right.
My major complaint about them was that I feel like they needed to change up the formula a little bit more. Like the first episode is about Captain Carter, which is if Peggy Carter got the super soldier serum and not Steve Rogers.
Right.
So it's kind of an origin story for her. For the most part, though, it plays out just like Captain America, the first Avenger played out, except it's her in the lead. And Steve Rogers still manages to become a hero in just a different kind of way. Very fun episode, just kind of like how First Avengers, kind of a fun Marvel movie, it's very much the same, but it's good to see Peggy Carter getting her due, and Haley Atwell, who plays her, because I think she's one of the best actors in the Marvel universe that we don't get to see very often because Peggy Carter died and got old. So anything that brings her back, and if rumors are true that we know from some of the things that have been teased that this is going to have some impact on the live action MCU. If it's true that her character is coming back, and I'm excited to see Haley Atwell come back as Captain Carter.
Right.
Second episode, Chadwick Boseman. Voicing Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman, his final Marvel role, coming back as T'Challa.
Man, very, very tough, man. I remember watching it, and when we got to the end, I was like,
super tough, man. Hearing him the entire way through in a story that kind of reimagines the Guardians of the Galaxy. The telling of this episode is basically Guardians of the Galaxy, except with T'Challa as the leader, as Star-Lord, rather than Peter Quill. It really hits you to hear Chadwick Boseman's voice in that role again. It's just like, man, so much lost, so young.
Man. So I know we're not. They've got us embargoed.
The third episode at all, so I don't even want to talk about the third.
Don't don't get us in trouble.
Except that it takes a crucial event to the MCU and reimagines it as sort of a murder mystery, and it is the most brilliant thing they've done. And the thing that, like I said, they needed to switch up the formula. This is the formula I'm talking about, where they do different genres and do different things entirely, rather than just retelling the same story with a couple of different lead characters. This third episode was the one that shows the true potential of what If can be. And right. That's the one that I'm most excited to get people's reaction to that one, and to see what happens after that. I have an idea of where this is going. It's kind of hard to, if you're a fan of Marvel, you've been reading them forever, like I have, you kind of have an idea where this might be headed. Which also gets me super excited for the potential of it as part of the MCU as well.
So Travis, you and I have talked about this often, throughout the years, right? Because again, you as a guy, as you just said, who's read these comics, since you were young. I, as a guy, never read any of these comics, and I always tease people because I was like, if I would have known what DC and Marvel were going to be doing around this time, I would have probably spent more time reading so that I could have some level of foundation to move forward. But Travis, what do you think? We're almost like 2/3 of the way into the year. This is the 4th series that Disney Plus has put out. How influential, how impactful, I guess I should use the word, how impactful has this series been not just on the MCU, but on the genre as a whole? When we're talking about, you're taking in DC, Marvel, and Marvel, because we've always had television stuff before. Warner Brothers has done, stuff for DC on television. Marvel has done some attempts. But how important is the addition of Disney Plus and these Disney Plus series, which are now canon, to the brand and to the genre?
It's incredibly important, and we're seeing other places, other studios kind of mimic the formula. Shocker, they've been mimicking the cinematic universe for a decade now. Why not try to mimic what they're doing on the small screen too? It's tremendously important in terms of, especially over this last year, where we have not had any Marvel on the big screen. The only thing we've had on the big screen was Black Widow, and you need to keep that enthusiasm, that interest, that connection with people. And Disney Plus has allowed for them to do that. And we're talking about shows that they're putting movie-sized budgets into. These things look like movies, and people are loving them as much as they are loving the stuff on the big screen. Now, I think the unintended consequence of that is that people have become accustomed to watching this stuff on TV. So now they get Black Widow doing not as good as it could have done on the big screen, because people are accustomed to watching Marvel on the small screen now. So that might be the unintended consequence, that they may have hurt themselves a little bit on the big screen. They made it a little bit too easy, possibly, to get people to get their Marvel fix. They can just tune into Disney Plus and keep in touch with the MCU. But yeah, I mean, these shows are crucial. We're seeing Marvel really fill out these phases now. This is phase 4. We've had more phase 4 content than we've had of any other phase, and it's really, we've only had one movie. And we only had one movie. So yeah, and like I said, we're seeing Warner Brothers do the same thing now. They're introducing Batgirl movie that's going to be exclusive to HBO Max. Blue Beetle, and so forth and so forth. All these things connected to the DCEU through the small screen. I mean, yeah, like Marvel had their TV shows before, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter and stuff like that. That have since been labeled non-canon. And of course, Warner Brothers has been doing this thing for ages, from Smallville on. They've been doing these shows that have never been really canon. They just kind of existed out on their own, and now they're bringing them in together. They've been incredibly important, and they're only going to grow in importance. I'm imagining that every studio out there is looking to build their own kind of universe like that encompasses the big and small screen, because right, I mean, why wouldn't you?
so Kevin Feige has done something that, at first people thought it was cute. You're building this cinematic universe. Man, we are now, this 2021, we're now 13 years in, Travis. There's an opportunity for Kevin Feige and Marvel, the way that they plan this out. You could be collecting Social Security and Marvel will still be releasing new movies, man. And I mean, I'm not being funny. I mean, that to me feels like where we're headed. How far out, to your knowledge, is Marvel's planning now? Because I know it was late 20s. About a couple of years ago. Are we still on that trajectory?
As far as I know, I mean, Kevin Feige stays at least 5 years ahead in advance. So I mean, I remember years ago they were like, oh yeah, he's already got things mapped out all the way through 2026. That was years ago. So he knows where he's at now. If there's going to come a point where any of this ever like hits the skids, it's going to be when and if Kevin Feige leaves. Because Kevin Feige, for all the success he's having, sometimes you want to go out and venture and do something else. So who knows? He's already producing a Star Wars movie coming up pretty soon, so he might be starting to head in that direction now. So wow. Who knows? So I don't know when these things ever come to an end. You got to figure there's got to be an end point somewhere, right, where they reboot everything or something. But I don't understand why you would at this point. And there doesn't seem to be any end in sight currently. So,
wow. I mean, to your point, man, if he steps aside, because he is the what I would call the creative juggernaut behind all of this stuff. He's not doing all the work. but he is organized.
If they want to mess it up, they'll let him go, and then they'll bring in Zack Snyder to run the whole thing, and then the whole thing will hit the skids on its own. So,
yeah, I mean, and it's funny because you've interviewed Zack Snyder before and met him.
I like Zack Snyder, so I actually
like Zack Snyder too. We interviewed him. We were around town. We did forget the series years ago, a little animated children's thing he did. But Zack Snyder's a nice guy, man. I mean, as a filmmaker, he's a visionary, but everybody, it's all about execution, man. You know, all of us can tell stories, but can you execute? We come up with these great concepts. What about the execution? And I think that's where Zack Snyder, to me, has fallen.
Zack Snyder is not a big picture guy. I don't like Zack Snyder as the guy to oversee an entire franchise encompassing many different creators. I don't see him as that guy. If you want Zack Snyder to tell his own contained story, he's perfectly fine. I think he's perfect for that. He's great at that. He's got tons of ideas, and he'll try to put every single one of them in each movie, which is one of his problems, one of his major problems. He needs an editor badly. But yeah, you need somebody like Kevin Feige who has a vision, who probably has no designs on trying to do his own thing the way Zack Snyder does. You need someone who can bring in people and have them all work together. It's very much like the Marvel Comics model, where you have to bring in multiple writers to work together to build something bigger than their individual projects. That is, you need somebody who is outside of it to some degree, not somebody who's in it.
So what's next, man, after What If, man? I know Hawkeye is coming. Is Hawkeye next?
I believe Hawkeye is next. I think that would be followed by Miss Marvel. There's also a She-Hulk series, and there's Moon Knight as well, with Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight. In fact, there's a supposedly leaked image of him in the Moon Knight suit that just dropped today. Earlier this morning. It's a little sketchy whether or not it's real or not, but it looks like it could be. So there's the number of projects they got coming up on Disney Plus alone, man, is just ridiculous. We're never going to be very far away from the next Marvel project, which is what they want.
Well, actually, we're not far away. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly. Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi, yep.
Shang-Chi. Now, Shang-Chi.
All by Eternals.
Now, watch this. Shang-Chi, interestingly enough, is the first Marvel project that we've seen since the pandemic started that they basically said, we're not giving you a link for this one. Now, I know you got a link, but I think, as to your point about Black Widow earlier, Disney, their bottom line took a hit with that second week of Black Widow. Travis, do you think people are comfortable enough? I mean, I know half the country refuses to even acknowledge that we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Is that the half that Marvel is going after with putting this exclusively in theaters?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit, I don't know where I fall on this yet, because there's a part of me that thinks by the time these movies come around, both Shang-Chi and Eternals, they'll have changed their mind and made it available for Disney Plus Premiere. I just feel like there's a chance of it, because things are worsening again. And we're starting to see studios make moves, putting that into consideration. We just learned yesterday that Sony has delayed Venom, Let There Be Carnage until mid-October. That kind of wishy-washy move of like 4 weeks is the kind of crap we were doing back in 2020 when everybody thought the pandemic was just a couple of weeks away from being gone.
Right.
And you think moving Venom 4 weeks.
4 weeks is going to help, huh?
Like Delta's going to be gone and people are going to be like, okay, back to theaters. That's not the case. That's not the way it's going to work. And we're going to see movies keep sliding. This could be the start of it happening all over again, just like last year. And I think you have to bring those, you have to consider all of that. And I know Disney, Marvel is considering that too. I will not be surprised if we see these movies end up on Disney Premier Access and theaters. Now we've seen all year the financial impact that has had on Warner Brothers and their movies. Outside of like Godzilla versus Kong, a lot of their films have struggled because they've been available for free on HBO Max. And it's not just the big stuff. It's not just the Suicide Squad and stuff like that. We're talking smaller stuff too, like Those Who Wish Me Dead and The Little Things, or stuff like that, that were mid-range movies that have suffered because of it. Now Warner Brothers was stupid because they put those movies on HBO Max for free. At least Disney,
right.
$30. So Disney's still making money off these things that they're bringing on Disney Plus. But in terms of like the box office receipts, they've struggled, which is why Black Widow has done 300 million plus worldwide, in comparison to something like F9, which has done like 900 million worldwide, or something crazy like
F9,
that.
F9 was never on a streaming service of any kind.
Right, that movie's not on any streaming service of any kind. So, I mean,
all right, man. Well,
I think we can see some changes. I think we can see Shang-Chi and Eternals end up on Disney Premiere Plus, I think, at some point before they come out. I would not be shocked.
All right, bro. Well, we're going to keep it moving, man. We got more movies. Up next, man, is we're going to save Aretha Franklin for the end of the show. But right now, we're going to talk about Free Guy, which was one of those screenings that you talked about earlier, Travis. I think it was me, Kevin McCarthy, and Lauren, Jim Judy, and there was another guy. And that was it, in like a 300-seat theater. The 5 of us watched that movie. And Free Guy, now we talked earlier about, as a joke, that the movie that you missed last night was a movie that I could have watched at home. I didn't really need to see that in theaters. Free Guy is absolutely the opposite. That movie plays really, really well in a theater. And again, since Travis is the master of the breakdown, now I'm just giving you guys a teaser, because if you ever watch Around Town, Travis is really comfortable when they throw it to him to kind of break movies down. They throw it to me. I'm going, man, this movie's fantastic. I love it. What is it about? Oh, no, you got to ask Travis what it's about. I don't do what it's about. So talk to us about Free Guy, Travis. What is this film?
I'll tell you one thing. I was excited to be, and the screening I was at was also only a few people too, which was fantastic. But the thing that was most excited me about Free Guy going into it was that I didn't have to watch that damn trailer no more, because I feel like I've been watching it for years. Because
for a year.
We have been watching that trailer for 2 years. The movie's been delayed so much. But that's the case for almost everything. But yeah, man, I absolutely love this movie. And I started my review by saying I think this might be the best video game movie ever. Of course, it's not based on any particular property, but in terms of video game films, I love this one as much as anything I've seen. And it basically stars Ryan Reynolds as an NPC, which is a non-player character. And anybody who's played Grand Theft Auto or any MMORPG knows those characters. They are the people that walk around and make the place feel real. You can't do anything. They're usually just there. They just exist to get beat up or run over by cars when you're in a mood or whatever. That's basically all they're there for. Right. And then Ryan Reynolds' character has this kind of come to Jesus existential crisis moment where he discovers that he lives in a video game and he's an NPC. He decides to not be that guy, to be a good guy, to be an active participant in his own life, which is a classic Universal story. And I'm frozen on our screen here. Uh-oh.
Yeah. You came back, man.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're not using your regular set, man.
No. I nothing to do with it. There we go. My camera has a tendency to blink out every now and then. But basically what happens is he goes and he starts to live in his own life and becoming a good guy in his own story. And it has impacts on the real world because, Taika Waititi, who is the guy who's directed Thor Ragnarok and is going to direct Thor Love and Thunder, and has an appearance in the Suicide Squad as Ratcatcher 2's father, a lovely couple of moments there, runs this Blizzard-esque company. And it's funny how timely this kind of movie is, considering all the things that have been going on with Blizzard and some of the toxic stories. We've heard about toxic workplaces in the video game community. This movie is very timely in its commentary about toxicity within the gaming community. It has impact in the real world because now he needs to get rid of this guy who is becoming way too popular and is blowing up his game, basically. There's also a whole big conspiracy thing too going on in here too about stolen code and things like that. And all this stuff is nice, but the best part about it is just this story of Ryan Reynolds' character coming to live his own life and becoming a part of his own, becoming a hero of his own story. And that kind of stuff is universal, man. I mean, this thing has echoes of the Truman Show to Stranger Than Fiction, all these sorts of stories that are similar to that. And I just absolutely loved it for all those things, but also just the video game touches, the commentary, the little nods to the fact that it is now a Disney movie when it wasn't when it started.
Right. That was hilarious.
It's a Fox movie, now it's a Disney movie. There are little touches like that they're just fun. Really great cameos in this too. I had an absolute blast with this film from start to finish. I was surprised because I expected it to be kind of throwaway. Thing about Sean Levy, the director, he makes movies that are instantly likable, but also kind of forgettable, like Night at the Museum and stuff like that. And you're just like, yeah, these movies are fun, but Free Guy is fun like those movies, but not forgettable. Like, I'm gonna watch this movie again and again.
Well, I was gonna say, man, I remember Charles Kirkland screamed at me when we were doing Tomorrowland earlier this summer about what I think about the interchangeability of Chris Pratt and Ryan Reynolds, right? Ryan Reynolds, to me, whether it's the fun stuff that he does like Deadpool or, and what was it? I rewatched The Green Lantern.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not a good movie at all. But Ryan Reynolds has an earnestness about him and a likability. I think he is the secret sauce of this film, right? So if you take Ryan Reynolds out and insert another actor, would you love Free Guy as much as you do, Travis?
I actually think Chris Pratt could play this role very well. The thing that's interesting about Ryan Reynolds to me is that I think studios have him a little bit backwards. They feel like they have to put him, because he is so earnest and likable and kind of off the wall. He's been off the wall since Van Wilder. He's been that way for a long time, but they feel like they need to put him in stuff that is edgy and kind of R-rated, the Hitman's Bodyguard movies and stuff like that. They feel like they have to do it. And Free Guy proves that you don't. Free Guy proves that you can put him in a role where he is just legitimately likable, legitimately somebody you want to root for, and he can carry it on his own. Like, he doesn't need the bells and whistles of 1,000 F-bombs and gunfire and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't actually need it. You can just plain like the guy. And I think Chris Pratt kind of has that too. I don't think they're exactly the same, but this is the type of role that they both could nail. This is very much a kind of the Lego movie type role, like the guy, the character in the Lego movie. Mm-hmm. Like, I think they both could play that role, like voice that role. I think they both could play this role.
Well, I'm with you on Free Guy. I had a lot of fun. Again, I always laugh because, you got the video background, you got the comic background. All I got is the movie background. So I watch movies and go, okay, this story works for me. Oh, I think this is executed well. I thought there was a lot of stuff going on, but I think that Ryan Reynolds as the center of the story, and as you said, this epiphany that he has about who he really is and the fact that he wants to assert himself and then empower the other characters that are in the story to do the same. So it's a lot of humor in this film. There's a lot of funny moments. As you said, the cameos are tremendously funny. There's one, which I'm not going to spoil, that is the last time we see a certain person. And I was like, wow, that was cool. They got that cameo. That was nice.
Yeah.
So
we think of Little Rel Howery. How is he only like the best friend guy now? Like, that's like all he ever does now. He just became the best friend guy. Like, I bet you the best friend guy check has really increased since Get Out. I mean, I'm not being funny. Oh, you're right. The best guy check is probably tripled at least.
Man, right. That best friend check now probably looks like back in the day, like it was a leading man check. He's getting the best friend check.
Yeah.
What was the other movie he did early this year where he was the best friend to a character?
He's in Bad Trip. That's one.
Well, no, it was another one where he had a wife in this one, and there was a character. I'm trying to remember what it was, but if I look through his filmography, but you're right, he's played a lot of.
And Brittany Does a Marathon. He was the best friend in that.
He's the best friend in that, and this is not even this one. This is one. Oh, this might have been the Lakeith Stanfield best friend. That was from last year. That was with Issa Rae. What the heck was the name of that?
Oh yeah. Was this the Photograph?
The Photograph. He was the best friend guy in that. So he's getting a lot of best friend checks these days. And I ran into him when we were at Sundance a couple of years ago. I wish I would have thought, like, you got another best friend coming up.
He is that guy, man. I'm trying to think who was that guy before him.
Like, the best friend guy. Well, used to have black women that played the best friend. Regina Hall was the best friend in a lot of movies.
Kevin Hart was the best friend guy before he became the guy.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm watching a new series right now that's on Peacock called Heart to Heart. And he just did an interview with Taraji P. Henson, and he talked about how he was the best friend guy. And, and it changed when he got to Think Like a Man too. He went from being the best friend guy to the highest paid person on the staff. And they were like, it's like, hey, man, life.
Because he was the best part of the first movie. And then they made him a bigger part of the second movie.
It comes at you quick, bro. So, hey, man, we got about 13 minutes to go, man. So let's get to this last movie. And for one, I can set this one up. It is the biopic for Aretha Franklin. And this is the second Aretha Franklin project that has dropped this year. Earlier this summer, I think back in April, National Geographic put out Genius Aretha. A couple of years ago, I remember her concert film, or several years ago, I should say, her concert film, Amazing Grace, which is referenced in Respect, dropped. So this film tells a 12-year arc of Aretha Franklin kind of as a child, quickly into a teenager, and then through her rise and her transition from Columbia Records to Atlantic Records in 1967, her string of hits, and ends with her doing Amazing Grace. Travis, I'll start on this one, man. The first thing I thought of when I watched this movie was that I kept comparing it to what we had seen earlier, and not just comparing the story, but looking at the casting, right? So we had Courtney B. Vance play her father, Reverend C.L. Franklin. In the miniseries, we get Forrest Whitaker in this one. Cynthia Erivo was Aretha Franklin in the miniseries. We get Jennifer Hudson in this one, and on and on and on. My issue with this film, and I'll just kind of like make it very succinct, I think that Aretha Franklin's life was so expansive, and the fact that the window of this story is so narrow was problematic to me. That was number one. Number two, Jennifer Hudson, she gave a fine performance, right? It's a great showcase. But we've seen Jennifer Hudson in other musical films before, most notably Dreamgirls, which I think is a vastly different but better performance than the one she gives in this film. My other issue with this is, and I was telling a colleague that I was referencing to you before we came on air, that he and I were talking about this film, and he and I basically said the same thing. The fact that you give this film to a first-time director and a first-time writer, and everybody in Hollywood needs opportunities, but I don't think anybody's first-time film should be the Aretha Franklin biopic. I think you need to get somebody that is a vet in the game, who understands the importance. Like, think about Malcolm X when you brought Spike Lee. When Spike Lee came and did Malcolm X, there was a certain reverence he had for that material that, he fought for it, Travis. This needs to be a certain length. We need to cover a certain arc of his story. This film, Respect, needed a director, needed a producer who would emulate what Spike did for that. I think, to me, that's the most disappointing part of it. I gave this movie a C. This movie, I didn't learn anything new about this movie or about Aretha Franklin that I already didn't know. And also, it was problematic to me that, you tried to steal the rave blueprint by, having the music, the highs, the lows, the triumph, and the tragedy, and all that stuff. But the problem is that from watching the miniseries several months ago, this period that's referenced in the movie that happens pre-1972 probably doesn't really happen until like 74, 75, but we needed to put it in the movie to give us this arc of, redemption, tragedy, rise. I don't know, man. It didn't necessarily work for me. I watched it and it didn't stick with me at all. How did you feel about Respect?
I think I liked it more than you did, surprisingly. I didn't go into Respect particularly excited to see it. I'm not a big fan of biopics because, and this includes this one, they all play the same hits. They all follow the same model: rise, fall, redemption, drugs, abusive husband. They all follow the same beats, and this one does too. But to me, I think they played those hits extremely well. I mean, I really like Jennifer Hudson in this. I agree with you that there is so much more to her life that could have been told, that this one feels a little bit constrained. I was really digging the section where she goes down to hang out with the Muscle Shoals guys, and I felt like that could have been a movie all in itself. Like, I would have wanted to see a movie just about that period where she is there with the Muscle Shoals guys, these funky white dudes who help her find her voice and her sound because she didn't have it before then. And these are the most unlikely people to help her do it. And at the same time, she's combative with her husband, who is trying to control her. It's ironic, these guys who are, including her father, trying to keep her quiet while using her voice. It's
Right.
ironic. And there's a lot of that in this movie. And I like those aspects of it. I felt like there could have been more. But I love that period of time where she's down there with the Muscle Shoals guys hanging out, finding herself. That's great stuff. That's when the movie takes off for me. But I love the use of her music in this. I think Jennifer Hudson's voice is fantastic, even though she sounds nothing like Aretha Franklin. That's fine. I don't care about that. I don't know. I just think this movie is successful without being amazing or anything like that. And I would agree with you to an extent that Liesl Tommy is probably not the best person to direct it, to be a first time director that makes something like this. To me, the best thing that Spike Lee brought to Malcolm X was prestige and credibility. Whether or not I don't necessarily think Liesl Tommy did anything necessarily bad in this movie. Like, I think it's very efficient the way it's directed. It's fine. It's good the way it's directed. But I think when you do biopics for people like Aretha Franklin, Malcolm X, whoever, these larger than life figures, you need a filmmaker who brings people who aren't necessarily digging the material, who don't necessarily think about the material all that much, who bring them in, who want to see this stuff. You want the movie to feel larger than life, just like the person. I don't know if this movie necessarily does that. But yeah, I still have found myself really getting into it. And as someone who's not necessarily like an Aretha Franklin, aficionado, I was not overly familiar about how her faith tied into everything that she did, or how her connections to Martin Luther King, or all the people that were hanging out at her house. Like, I knew bits and pieces, but I didn't really get to see it. And it was good to me to learn a little bit of something about that aspect of her, because I think that's the thing that makes this movie a little bit more unique compared to other biopics, is the way she relied on her faith so much to get through everything, and how her faith was also at times the instrument of her downfall. So it kind of played both ways for her, but it was instrumental all throughout, and her reliance on her family and things like that. Those are the little touches to me that kind of elevated this film for me. So I think I liked it more than you. I think it's really good. Is it something that I think is going to be like an awards contender or something like that? Probably not. But yeah, I do think it's an accomplished movie, though. I did enjoy it.
So to drive the point home, man, about when we talk about these biopics and having a strong director, think about Michael Mann doing Ali. Right. I think about Taylor Hackford doing Ray. I think about Martin Scorsese, who really wanted to do the Bob Marley story, never got off the ground about 6 or 7 years ago because he couldn't get all of the sign off. But can you imagine Martin Scorsese telling a Bob Marley story in a biopic that's probably going to be 2.5 to 3 hours? How dope that would have been. So Aretha Franklin, who I think, like you said, is a larger than life figure, iconic. The fact that you take her story and most for 2 hours, we are living in this 12-year bubble, and you don't even really, and I absolutely agree with you, and I think it's true in this film, and it was just as true in the miniseries that National Geographic put out, that the Muscle Shoals part is a very instrumental part, because up until that time, she had been in Columbia Records, and her career was going nowhere. She had 9 albums, They were trying to turn her into a jazz singer. She comes down to this gritty outpost that's out in the middle of nowhere in the late 60s, right? And she shows up and there's a room full of white funky musicians, and she sits there and we discover who Aretha Franklin is. We find out, we get Respect, I Never Loved a Man, Spanish Harlem, all these hits that come out of that association, between her and Atlantic and these musicians down at Muscle Shoals. You're absolutely right. Now, there has been a documentary, Travis.
Oh, the Muscle Shoals doc, which I was thinking of. I was telling people after the movie, I was like, this makes me want to go rewatch that Muscle Shoals doc, which I was fantastic back in, I don't remember what year it was that it came out.
Oh, God, yeah, man. So between Muscle Shoals, man, and Standing in the Shadow of Motown, and I think there needs to be a documentary about MFSB from Philly International, as well as Stax, Booker T, and the MGs. These house bands, man, are the reason that we got all this fantastic music. Because somebody, we always fixate on the singer, but somebody's got to be the person in the room who's playing all these instruments and coming up with all these licks.
That's why I liked her husband kept suggesting all these ramshackle dudes. They're like, man, she needs better than that.
Well, what did you think about Marlon Wayans' performance? We got about 2 minutes. What did you think about Marlon Wayans?
I'm past the point of being surprised by Marlon Wayans when he does something good. He's actually done quite a few dramatic roles. He's been really strong. I think he's solid in this. The role is archetypal, though, man. I mean, we've seen that abusive, controlling character so much. I don't know if there's anything more you can do with it, and I don't think he necessarily does anything new with it either. He's solid, but that's it.
You know what, man? This conversation we just had about this week in films just goes to show you how much the chemistry that the two of us have. I enjoy talking to Travis Hopson. I mean, Travis, it might see the world a little cockeyed from me, but when we sit down and we talk about movies, man, this is what we do. This could have been an Addicted to Film episode, man. This is hot.
Oh, it would have been. The only thing we're missing is the disco lights flashing above our heads. Then we'd be fine.
Yeah, we look, Travis. We need to be someplace. You're right. Look, Travis, we need to be someplace where they paying us to be there instead of us paying you.
Hey, I agree. We need to find that out somewhere.
All right, bro. Well, Travis, before we let you go, man, let people know where they can follow you at Punch Drunk Critics.
Well, you just told them. You can find me at punchdrunkcritics.com every day. This morning, I put up my review of Beckett with John David Washington. So that's up there. I might do Don't Breathe too this weekend. I don't know. We'll see. And you can find me on WTA Around Town, my own podcast, Cinema Royale, which you can find on Spreaker. And pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, you can find Cinema Royale. And a bunch of other places too. Just type in Travis Hopson Film Critic and you'll find it.
Wow, that's what I'm talking about. So as we tell you guys in closing every week, man, please see something good at the movies. There are several options, not just in theaters, but also in streaming. Make sure you wear a mask, protect yourself, man, because if you don't care about you, they damn sure don't. Until next week, man, we will see you guys on the other side. Thank you, Travis. It's always a pleasure having you on, bro. We need to do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
All right, man. You guys take care. And episode 467 is a wrap. Peace until next week.